and I kind of emerged as a conflict like solver, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And really, it one, yeah, I became a mediator, and two, it like really emerged my I don't want conflict, but I know what conflict can cause.
Right.
So when I talk about earlier, like knowing that I should talk about something when it's a little bit hard, I think that emerges from maybe my experience with my parents being like, okay, I don't like conflict, but I don't want like really bad conflict because I dealt with that a lot and it sucks. So I'm going to try to do what I can to not get that kind of conflict. I'll settle for a little bit of like maybe hard discussion, um, if that makes sense. But the older I get, the more I think the lessons of that whole divorce really show up in my life, and really motivate me a lot with like the kind of man and husband I want to be, um, and what I don't want to be. And yeah, I think, yeah, like experiences when you're a kid, I think they really do echo like throughout your whole life.
Hmm.
Um, so for me, that's a huge thing. And then like joint with my spiritual beliefs, I think that like combination almost creates a lot of what I value and what I am trying to work towards, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been reading a bunch of Joseph Campbell lately, and he's a kind of generalist, really big into mythology and religion and the role that it plays in culture. And
Mhm.
I think what I've realized from him is that like these books, like any religion, mythology, things that people believe and that kind of create this culture for us, they're really at their, if I were to boil it down to the simplest form, I'd say that they're like it's a self therapy book. And I think that
Mhm.
that's something that we've kind of lost over
Mhm.
the past few years, over the, I'd call it like the modernization of spirituality. Maybe like people are moving away from books and
Mhm.
storytelling, whereas 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago in Egypt, if there's a problem, like you're having an interpersonal problem with someone, then you talk
Mhm.
about Osiris. and and if you're like a Viking, then you talk about Thor and Odin and the problems that they face and how they deal with these issues. And it stops things from being so kind of rigid and like, oh, you have to go talk to someone. And you're not hearing that from your parents in those situations. You're hearing them from like literal gods, like
Right.
these things that are much bigger than us. And it's kind of, I
Mhm.
would say the most for me the most salient example is the David and Goliath story, and how that's this story of being an underdog and being too small for a situation, but succeeding by putting yourself out there and taking the leap to actually strive for that thing.
Right.
And I feel like we've kind of lost that over time. And I actually think like this is something that I'd love to talk to Benjo about, is how
Mhm.
storytelling creates culture and team. And in your guys' situation, I would say one of the best teams to emerge from North America in the
Mhm.
past 10 years, or one of the best programs at the very least. And so like I'm really interested in that aspect of religiosity and spirituality and mythology, is how we can use these stories to educate ourselves, because so many people have these epiphanies when they read stories and go like, whoa, that mirrors my life. That's this archetypal story that tells my story, just in different terms, with these figures that are a lot bigger than myself, and then I'm able to tailor my experience to that.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's amazing, man. Like storytelling to me is it's such a great way to understand things, right? Like even Jesus taught in parables, like all the time. Like that was the
Hmm.
way he taught things for people to understand.
Right.
Um, and even like I'm listening to this podcast about like kind of the foundations of like human morality and like the Bible and stuff, and it's really interesting. It's actually a Jordan Peterson lecture.
Hmm.
Um, it's really interesting just to hear like his thoughts on it, but just about like how people maybe the Bible specifically like take some of the stories too literally,
Hmm.
and then they just like throw the whole thing out the window when there's like so much they could learn like just from these stories and apply to their lives. Um, and then what you talked about with like the like people not like going to the gods or that's so true. Like in the last whatever couple centuries, that's really like only been a thing, you know,
Hmm.
like for the rest of human history, like people always went to like the hierarchy of spirituality for everything. And they fear the spirituality of everything.
Hmm.
Um, and I think in fearing, like you talk about like being a God fearing person, in fearing like that, like to me, if I fear God, then I'm not fearing life stuff. But if I don't have that, then life things start to freak me out.
Right.
Um, and like the anxieties and the pressures of things are all on me instead of on something else.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think that's a topic that you could dive into super deep, but you should for sure reach out to Benjo and get him to talk about that because he's so great with like I can think of so many stories that he's used to inspire me as an athlete like and then he turns the stories into mantras.
Hmm.
Um, like one of them I can think of is he talked about Muhammad Ali and he was I forget who he was boxing, maybe it was Joe Frazier, that's probably wrong. But he like he kept calling him like Cassius Clay, like in all the interviews and stuff. And Muhammad Ali was like switching his name. So then he's like in the ring with him and he's like knocking him out. And he's like, every time he pops him with one, he's saying like, what's my name? What's my name? Like, and he just like keeps going like another one, what's my name? Until he like knocks him out. And, and then Benjo makes that into a mantra, like, what's my name? Like he'd say that before a game or something. Like, just keep going, like keep popping him. Like, what's
Hmm.
my name? Like, who are we? You know? And I'll always remember that. I could go on with so many examples, but you should really get him on here, man. I think what you're doing is great, and I love the questions you ask. And yeah, you'd be a great guy to have on here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think that'd be a ton of fun. I'd really like to dig into a lot of things that he, number one, I've heard about him, and number two, that I'm just curious about his presence. And I think that the great coaches that I've met that aren't just not strictly in the sense of volleyball coach, like win loss column, but the coaches that have developed people to the highest extent, I
Hmm.
think are great storytellers. Like
Yeah.
lots of coaches that I've met are actually almost every coach that I've had through my volleyball career. I've been super fortunate to have really good coaches, and my favorite coaches are storytellers
Oh,
because
absolutely.
they just make things so relatable, and it's not just numbers and angles and platform, but it's like this underlying consciousness to our culture and to humanity. Like they bring these things out of the depths of our minds that show us the things that we're capable of and the things that are possible in the world, rather than
Mhm.
just saying ball nose angle, hit the ball at your highest contact point. It's these stories that motivate us and that allow us to grow.
Oh yeah, man, that is so true. Yeah, I have so many stories that are just like coming to my head now. Yeah, that's amazing. You got to get him on here. I think it'd be great. And
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, wow,
yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
absolutely.